Last time on Shadow Piece, the declaration and opening of the church proceeded smoothly. Everyone was enjoying their time until Anastasius returned, but they quickly noticed that something was off. In fact, this was actually Loki disguised as Anastasius, and he kidnapped the ghost princess Perona. It was always his plan to capture what Maria sees as the most valuable thing, and then make a deal to exchange Perona for the thing that they actually want. Using pirate logic, this makes perfect sense. But when it comes to his family, Maria stops being a pirate and turns into a pretty overprotective father. All this together led to the Shadow Emperor unleashing a silent form of rage, like no other before, making the entire island where the Holy Province Kingdom is based on experience multiple forms of their own death. Without saying a word, he makes himself on the way back to the thriller bark. Considering that Anastasius was defeated, it is only a matter of time before all of their transformations will wear off as well. Nothing is stopping them now. The war against the Blackbeard pirates will start as soon as they arrive at the port of Hachinosu. The finale of this entire tale is now about to begin. But as they are setting sail, the voice of Dr. Vegapunk fills the entire world through the help of countless Dendenmushi. To Moria and the other members of his crew, this is interesting, but in the end it isn't their main interest in this very moment. However, to the rest of the world, this is groundbreaking. This is big news. After some preambles and drinking a cup of Vega coffee to give everyone enough time to set up their snails, the scientist who has been declared a traitor to all of humanity starts talking. I have committed 3 sins. Therefore, whether I am arrested or executed, I shall program this message to be broadcasted when my heart stops beating. However, I want to make one thing clear first. Whoever may have rendered their judgment on me, I am not trying to convince you that their intent is evil. I will not apply the labels of good and evil at all. In fact, because I understand too little about them to begin with. What I am about to tell you is so preposterous you might even burst into laughter. However, you all have the right to know. To make a long story short, the world as we know it will sink into the sea. Now, speaking of near future me, assuming that the sensors I built are functioning correctly, there should have been a most remarkable earthquake that struck the entire planet. Depending on the developments of the situation, there could have even been 2 of them actually. As a result of that, the sea should rise about 1 or maybe 2 meters around the entire world, rendering many islands uninhabitable. Beaches around the world will be lost for good. If I am wrong in this prediction, feel free to disregard the rest of the message. If this happened, however, you should heed my words very carefully. This earthquake, or perhaps these earthquakes, are not exactly what I would call a natural phenomenon. In my own way, I only ever hoped for peace, but life isn't that simple. But this was the root of my first sin, which ultimately led to my second. I dreamt of a source of endless eternal energy, and in my desire to push the world forward into the future, I flew too close to the sun. Allow me to explain just what it is that is happening to our world. From about 900 years ago to 800 years ago, a period of a century, there was a span of history that is completely entirely blank now. We call this the Void Century because all records from that time were eliminated. The only means to know this lost piece of history is to find a message from the past in the form of the poneglyphs scattered across the entire world and then decipher its contents. However, the world government has made it a crime of the highest order to decipher the messages of the poneglyphs, and despite being a member of the government myself, I broke this law. This was my third sin. Through sheer tenacity of a group of excellent archaeologists, I inherited some texts and a number of poneglyphs as well, which I have deciphered and continued to study to the best of my abilities. I regret nothing. History, you see, tells a story. In other words, what I know is an incomplete story of that 100-year void. It would be dishonest to fill the blanks with my own speculations or theories, so I leave you only with the verified truth. The main character of this story was born into a kingdom with an impossibly advanced civilization, and that's 900 years ago. Like the sun god Nika spoken in Elbaf's legends, he fought with a body that stretched and contracted. His name was Joy Boy. and he was the first man on this entire sea to be called a pirate. But as for why he was called a pirate, I have only read from a handful of poneglyphs. But what I found there was the record of a breathtakingly vast war. Joy Boy's enemy was the world government of the present day. More accurately, it was the precursor of the world government, a provisional army put together by 20 kingdoms known better as the Alliance. You might say they had no other choice, so robust was Joy Boy's faction. Without knowing the spark that caused the war, I won't say who was right or wrong. I'll simply state that two competing ideologies came head to head. As I mentioned earlier, for its time 900 years ago, the country of Joy Boy's birth was a startlingly advanced civilization, and the weapons that were used over the course of this 100-year conflict appear to be impossible to recreate even with the latest of modern science. Even I, a humble genius, cannot replicate them, and therein lies the problem. The Void Century came to a close with the defeat of Joy Boy, but not before leaving vast, permanent scars of war across the face of the entire world. The world is made up of a series of islands now. Sailing between them is difficult, and many people never experience anything but their own culture at home. But this shared understanding of the world that we have now does not necessarily apply to the world of 1,000 years ago, because the cataclysm occurred during the Void Century, causing the world to sink once before. We are currently living on the pieces of a continent that existed long ago. The world of a millennium ago now slumbers unseen at the bottom of the sea. In fact, one can assume that in the past there were a number of continents we know nothing about. If the world were still the same as it was in the past, then the act of erasing 100 years of history would be simply unthinkable and impossible. However, it makes much more sense when you understand that the rise in sea level over that century was 200 meters. As for why the sea levels rose so much during that century, it would be natural to assume the work of a sudden natural disaster, but I can state for a fact that this was a man-made disaster. If such a cataclysm were caused by natural forces, then the initial disaster would have spanned several centuries and inflicted slow but continual damage upon the world. But by any measurements, no matter if climatology, geology, environmental and atmospheric science, this dramatic shift could not have happened within a single century. So, the cause must have been something else. And when I detected the rise in worldwide sea levels the other day, I had my answer. I know the cause and also confirmed its existence. The ancient weapons that sank the world into the sea 800 years ago still exist today, and they await the moment that they stir once again. In other words, the vast war that arose during the Void Century never came to an end. Sadly, I owe you all my deepest apologies, but I need you to understand why. I wanted to create the energy that would power the industry of the world to come, and though it is still incomplete, I have, or perhaps had at least reached a practical stage of my life's work, the Mother Flame, a fire that never goes out. It is an energy source that will one day in the future enrich the lives of people all over the world. Unfortunately, one little piece of that flame has been stolen. The fault lies entirely with me. Around 2 or maybe 3 weeks ago now, after the theft of the flame, the sky over Lulusia shone with a powerful light, and then the kingdom vanished without a trace, according to reports. After that was when I observed the first signs of worldwide earthquakes. And as a scientist and with utmost pride in its development, I can tell you this: nothing but the Mother Flame could have created so much energy. The flame that I created was used to activate an ancient weapon. I know nothing about who might have carried this out, but the results speak for themselves. My actions have led directly, which is my second sin, to the loss of countless human lives. Once by a mysterious attacker, and another time by myself to erase Egghead from existence as well. This is a fact that weighs most deeply on my soul. I am so sorry. I have inadvertently proven that the man-made disaster that once sank the world is possible again. In the past, there were 3 ancient weapons, and Joy Boy attempted to preserve them for the future. Why would he do that for such dangerous things? We not sunk far enough? Who is the true evil here? And who fights the good fight? The day will come when all the answers are laid bare. And I warn you, that moment will happen when we reach the very precipice of the world's drowning. The Void Century is still ripe with mystery. However, there are some who have learned the truth. The King of the Pirates crew. When they learned all of the history, why did they drift apart without telling anyone? Why didn't they act on it? I realize I have been quite vague on this point. However, I can't add anything further other than pure speculation. I have one last message I wish to impart. It is for those who are scattered all across the world. Those of you who carry the letter D in your name. And this is the end of today's episode of Shadow Piece, because I have no idea what the message Vegapunk wanted to tell actually was. But yes, this was the entire message that Vegapunk told over the recent chapters of One Piece. With minor changes and add-ons from Shadow Piece stuff. And also, did you notice something? We all know from the lore that I created for this universe that Hisanashi, the devil fruit that Maria has, is actually the mother of Nika. And, well, this person can use flames that never stop burning. Did you perhaps notice that I connected the mother flame with Hisanashi as the mother of Nika because she also has flame powers and all of these minor things? That's just a small detail that I had in there that I don't think anyone noticed. So I think you will enjoy this. We are now entering the final war, and then we have an epilogue. But I think that's also going to be a long journey. But for now, that's all from me for today. All that's left to be said is stay happy, stay healthy, and most importantly, stay cultured. Pyro, out. Bye!